So now we see that I'm talking about this statement C. And usually I get this, I'll hold up the board. In fact, I'm going to give you a video that I made a couple of years ago. I'm a little bit pressed for time, so I don't want to do it again today. But if you come to one of my in-person classes, I'll let you know you can come and see this in person and see what's the story. But let's go. We're going to cut over there, and I'm going to give you an idea what the board looks like and what this statement is claiming. And then I'm going to ask, as I've asked you, I want you to decide whether I can or cannot do it. And the video is going to explain how things typically work out. And normally, what I tell my students is, I say, we're talking about this board and one of these two hands. I'm not putting a hammer, a sledgehammer, a saw, or any other tool. With my bare hand, we're talking about whether I could break it. Now, what usually happens, and I'll find out later on after I see what you guys have written, is I discover that certain percentage of class, I often like to try to get it at 50-50, thought that I could break it. And I kid around. I say, okay, those are the people who have a chance of still passing the course. And then I call them the Legum believers. And then let's say half the class thinks that I can't break the board. And what I usually do at this point is I kind of hold the board up and it usually only takes me one try, and I break it. I did do some cutting there. It did take me 2 shots to break it. It normally doesn't. And I usually give the students a warning. Don't try this at home. This is done by a trained professional under carefully controlled circumstances, namely me. I happen to have I'm a 6th degree master in Taekwondo. It's not exactly a challenge for me to break it, but everybody walks away with the conclusion, gee, the professor can break the board, or he's a tough guy, or something like that, which is not the point of the whole exercise. But the point of the exercise is the following. If I asked people now towards the end of the class, or a couple of minutes after I first asked them whether it was true that Legum can break the board with his bare hands, and there are always a few skeptics who think, and especially if they're watching it on tape, they're going to say, "Oh, I doctored up the tape; it really didn't break it." You can come to class and see it if you really want. If you're really worried about it, it's not exactly a great feat. It's not magic or anything, but the point is that even if it took me 2 shots, I still can break the board. And even today, as I'm recording this, I can break one board. As I'm telling you, it's no great challenge for me. But notice, like B, that is female genital mutilation is morally wrong, or other moral statements, C, that Legum can break the board with his bare hands, also is a matter of significant controversy. There's a lot of disagreement about whether I could or could not. And notice, or at least there was a lot of big disagreement at the beginning of class. On the other hand, now everybody's going to say, well, now everybody agrees. And some people say, you see, now it became true, but it didn't become true after I broke it. It was always true that I can break the board. In addition to which, let me tell you, I would be a complete idiot trying to break that board if I wasn't pretty certain that I can break the board, because you could damage your hands, which is why I'm telling you not to do it at home. But the point is that there's the same sort of reason when you look at the case that we just discussed as to whether statements like C are neither true nor false. In fact, there's a perfectly analogous argument or reason. That is, if there is significant disagreement about whether statements like C are true or false, then statements like C are not true or they're not false. There is significant disagreement about whether statements like C are true or false. We just had it in a class. Therefore, statements like C are not true or false. The idea is we know this is a bad argument in this case because the truth of C didn't change from the time you first saw the board to the time you saw me break it. The truth of that statement didn't change. Before I did it, I could break it. even though the part you didn't see where I slipped, I didn't really hit it hard enough the first time and it didn't break, but the second time it did break, I still can break the board. In fact, I can still break it right now as I'm recording this. So the point is that they've given you very bad reasons for thinking that statements about morality, moral judgments, are all, a matter of opinion. That they're culturally relative. You'll hear in certain sociology class, they're social constructs, and therefore there's no truth or falsity about the matter. They give you a lot of bad arguments for why, this is a great conclusion. I don't think it's such a great conclusion. We'll talk about that more. But I think initially the idea is statements are either true or false, and moral judgments are just another species of statement. So in going into the course, now I haven't proven that what they're claiming about moral statements is not false. I have not proven that it is false. That I haven't proven that there's truth or falsity to moral statements. However, it seems to me there's no reason for thinking that there isn't. There may be the more complicated reasons. Philosophers talk about this a lot, but at least for the sake of our course or going into our course, it seems to me reasonable to think that moral judgments, statements expressing moral judgments, are true and false. Maybe it's a little bit hard to figure out whether they're true or false, but I'm going to say a little bit more about that in the continuation of this video. So stay tuned, and I'm going to ask you after that actually, I'm going to ask you right now to go into the discussion board if you're in the class, and explain what I was trying to prove with that. You'll see it.